Drug maker Eli Lilly out with its fourth quarter results just a few minutes ago. Joining us now to break down the numbers, David Ricks, Chairman and CEO of Eli Lilly. Good to see you again, David D. We all talk about COVID, and I think even in your results, this is that's where we want to focus, I think, because not only was the antibody therapy really useful in treating the disease, but it also, that's a pretty large number that we're talking about in terms of sales for a quarter. Is it not, for a relatively new drug for Eli Lilly? Out of $7.4 billion, you're talking about $871 million for the antibody therapy.
That's right, Joe. Good to see you, and thanks for having me on. We had a strong quarter, and as you're pointing out, part of that was driven by the new antibody for Covid-19, bamlanivimab. Most of those are government purchases. And, we got into this not to drive Q4 earnings, but to make a difference in the pandemic. And we're even more pleased with the number. We're pleased that doctors and patients are finding success with the antibody therapy. Just last week, we announced results. This same drug can help prevent acquiring the disease in nursing homes. When one resident's infected, we know the tragedy that's been happening where the whole home becomes infected. We can slow that down dramatically, 80%. And then just a few days ago, we announced new compelling results from a much larger study that showed 70% reduction in hospitalization and a reduction in death. So this is an important tool in the fight against COVID.
And that was a combination with what, baricitinib? Is that the other antibody that we're talking? No, a different one?
Baricitinib is also a Lilly drug, which we one strategy is to repurpose medicines we already had. Baricitinib is a drug for rheumatoid arthritis that's used in the hospital with Gilead's drug, remdesivir.
Right, okay.
And has been shown to let people leave the hospital earlier. That's an oral pill. We tested two antibodies together because, as I'm sure you might ask about resistant strains, one of the strategies to have these medicines work against resistant strains is to combine them. So you're attacking the virus from two different sides, as it were. And that's the combination data that we just announced that showed that dramatic reduction in hospitalization and death. That's a Lilly combination antibody.
And you said it, bamlanivimab. And so you delivered, you purchased by the U.S. government almost 1.5 million doses, a million delivered at this point. We've heard that we all know about how difficult it is to get the jabs out and the vaccines. There's also some issues logistically with this. How is that eased? Are people that can benefit from the antibody treatment from Lilly, are they able to get it now in a much easier fashion?
It's improving, Joe. I think when in December the government came out and said they estimated, about 20% of what they had shipped had been used. We've probably doubled that number or a little bit better since. We estimate well over 100,000 people have benefited. And that's important because, we can make the drug, but if it doesn't get in people's arms, it's not going to help. It's a different kind of problem than the vaccination, but shares some characteristics. I think the main point is hospitals and healthcare regions need to do things differently to put this antibody to work. We have to find at-risk people early, right after their diagnosis. And the best practice for many systems that have used a lot of this is they actually flag the chart and a nurse calls you when you have a positive test if you fit in that over 65 or high-risk group. And they encourage you to go to a specific address and get the antibody. And then we need nurses and staff to run the center to do the infusions. It takes about an hour or two, and we're working to reduce that, by the way. But it takes a bit of time, but it's worth it because in our studies, 2% of the people in the at-risk group died without the antibody and 0 with the antibody, and 70% reduction in the probability of going to the hospital. It's worth a couple hours if you're a high-risk person to ask for the Lilly or the Regeneron antibodies. I think we're both trying to do the same thing here.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.